All right, welcome back, folks. Hope you all had a good lunch. So you're following some of the nutritional advice that was passed out in the last panel. If you're at home, hope you had a good break as well. So this session is going to be focusing on the psychosocial aspects of living with PNC. We'll be hearing from patients and caregivers. We'll be hearing from some experts in the field. And just hang on. Oh, here we are. Just to set the scene and set an introduction, you heard my voice before. I'm Brian Thorsen. I'm the director of the PSC Partners Patient Registry, which is just one avenue for amplifying your voice in research. But I'm also a PSC patient myself. I've been a patient with Dr. Yamam for a few years now, and it's really kind of mind-boggling to be up on the stage co-leading these events with her. So when we talk about the self-empowered patient, that's not what I'm talking about. We're thinking about more from the lens of how do you advocate and make sure you're getting the best care and support that you need. So to set the scene for that, a few years back, I was living with my parents in Southern California, managing care up north, going on visits as I could, and 2 in the morning in January, I wake up with terrible pain, suspected acute cholangitis. So we go to the hospital there, and it's not suburban, it's not rural, it's somewhere in between. It's not quite the same resources as Sutter. And I'm there with terrible pain, terrible fatigue, and I see my doctor, the ER physician, Googling PSC. So there are going to be times like that. I think a lot of us as patients have experienced in that journey where you have to be your number one advocate in the scene. So I had to be there to say, no, okay, so yes, you've gotten my liver labs. Here's what it normally looks like for me. It's not just about what it is for the typical patient, right? But where is that flux happening? What is unique to my care, right? PSC is a highly variable disease. We're always going to be dealing with an N of 1 at some point. And to share a little more about that perspective, we have David and Gin Hansson. So David was born in Oakland, earned his bachelor's in business from Cal State East Bay. He was initially diagnosed with PSC at 16, and that was changed to autoimmune hepatitis in the transition to adult care. But after a second opinion and some further diagnostics, it was reconfirmed as PSC in his early 30s. So already a long journey there. David underwent his first liver transplant in August 2019, and due to recurrent PSC, he received a second transplant December 2024. He's currently on disability and actively navigating the healthcare system to maintain liver stability while also managing lupus and ulcerative colitis. In his personal time, David enjoys reading, gardening, playing a variety of games, spending quality time laughing with his family. Similarly, speaking of family, we have Gin Hansson here as well. Gin was born in General Santos City, Philippines, and immigrated to the US at the age of 1 with her mom and 2 sisters. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology and later her master's in social work from Cal State East Bay. I'm guessing this is where you met. And in 2025, she became a licensed clinical social worker. Jen currently works for the City of Berkeley's Mental Health Division, where she supports community members experiencing severe mental health conditions. In her personal time, she enjoys time with her family, creating annual photo albums, and supporting her husband's health and well-being. Let me turn it over to you two.
Okay, yeah, and we actually met in high school, and so I've been diagnosed with PSC for about 25 years, and we've been together for about 23 of those years. So she's a vital part of my healthcare journey and just talking with doctors and making sure that I know what I'm talking about half the time. Let's see, I've been to about 10 different doctors, about 4 different hospitals all around the Bay Area here. And it was hard to start at a 16-year-old when you go into some of these doctor meetings and everyone, they all have gray hair, no offense to anyone older here. But they're an authority figure and you kind of listen to what they have to say. So you don't really think to advocate for yourself, you just listen because they know best. And it took a while and we would discuss amongst ourselves and like, that didn't sound right. Like that's not right either. I mean, at one point, I think I was complaining about joint pain, and my doctor was like, "Oh yeah, I have joint pain too." I mean, he was like 2 years away from retirement, and I was probably just turned 20. He was like, "I just take an aspirin every day." I'm like, okay, well, that also doesn't sound right, but I can try it, sure. And eventually, I researched myself, and and found out that the vancomycin study at Stanford. And I booked a appointment over there to talk with the doctor there. And I kind of saw the different level of care that one of these more established hospitals or more prestigious hospitals kind of give you. And I said, well, after we left that appointment, I said, we got to change our insurance plan. That was the first thing we had to do. They took, for years I was on prednisone up and down, up and down. Every time my liver enzymes went up, more prednisone. And then I went over there and they were like, oh, well, we'll put you on prednisone usually for maybe a couple of weeks. Then we'll kind of figure out what's going on, and then you won't need to be on prednisone anymore. So, I mean, I've had so many issues with prednisone. She's had to deal with a lot of them also as a caregiver. So I couldn't wait to get off that. And then some more insurance changes bounced around, and I'm at CPMC now with Dr. Yamam. I saw Dr. Ho previously before that. And just they've just been amazing doctors who listen to what I say, who every time I'm thinking something, they're already bringing it up, so I don't have to go home and Google what's happening to me. They tell me, and I believe them, which is great. Also, not just the doctors, but the nurses and the coordinators. Everybody's been just top of the line care for me, and one of the reasons I made it through my 2 transplants, and I'm doing good enough to sit here and talk with you guys. Do you have anything you want to add about self-advocacy?
I think for me, being 19 and being told, being told, hey, guess what? Like, there's something wrong with me. I was like, uh-oh. And I was taught by my mom and my sister, my nieces over there, that you stay strong if you really care about a person, you really care about a person. So as soon as I made that decision, it was like, what are we seeing in David, right? Whenever he was sick, I would jot that down. I'd say, okay, he has like pain here, headache here, or he's really fatigued, he's looking a little bit yellow. And being 19 and going to a doctor who's a lot older and saying, oh, no, and like literally taking my list and doing this was really disheartening, because it was like, no, I'm with him every day, I don't understand. So I heard my mom again, like, advocate. So I learned how to say, thank you, but no thank you, and I did this to them. In a respectful way, right? Because providers are trying to support you, and sometimes it's hard for them if they too aren't familiar with the disease or what's going on with you to figure it out too. And for the ones that we did work with, they had an ego, and I get that. I mean, I'm a social worker, I work with psychiatrists and stuff like that, and sometimes it's like, we're not jiving right now, so I respect you, and then we're gonna go somewhere else. And then from then on, it was like looking at insurance, and I think insurance has been really important, and for us to sit down and say, well, what can help? And luckily, when we went to Stanford, the provider that we saw there was like, ooh, your insurance won't cover this. I'm gonna say, we didn't meet, but here's the information that I have. So she saw us as people, not as, I'm a provider, I'm up here, and I'm gonna tell you what's happening. She said, you tell me what's happening, because she understood we're the drivers of our story, right? And you need to learn from us, and we need to collaborate together, which was great. And what David forgot to mention is that we also have a lot of family that's been really supportive. David's aunt was, oh, I'm sorry. You want to talk about that? So we, like David was fortunate enough, his aunt was married to one of the founders of, I think, the Transplant. He worked at CPMC, and he was hearing kind of the story. Like, his aunt was like, hey, let me talk to my ex-husband, and he heard the story, and he right away was like, I think it's PSC. And he took us in, he drew the picture for us of how that looked, and showed us how do we advocate for ourselves and talk about our story, because it is very unique. And then when David was having these complications with prednisone, he said, no, you can die. And David's been in several situations where he could have died because of some of the information that we were getting that wasn't right. This is what you do. So I think having that was great, because it was like a support for us too, because we had no idea. And then coming to CPMC, I've just felt like David has had this support where it is this collaboration. Like, you know, we've worked with Dr. Azario, and he's like, oh, David's here. Here's the book. Let's throw it away because tell me what it is that's going on, because it's different from what we've seen from other people. Dr. Umam has been really great in being like, okay, David, what happened since the last time we met? And a lot of providers don't ask that, right? What happened in your life? What happened, you know, symptom-wise, and how are you doing? And so it's been this great collaboration with Dr. Umam, with Dr. Miriam, and like all the Dr. Guy. So we've been very fortunate. So yeah.
I was going to talk about the family support because it's so needed. I mean, visiting me in the hospital, stopping by the house with the food or with the dinner, or just coming by and hanging out. Didn't realize how much all these things really, really matter to people until I was the one receiving them. And there was one point, I think it was my second transplant. The first one, I got called and they said, you have an hour to get to the hospital. We were in Alameda, so we got here about 45, 50 minutes, but we did pretty much everything wrong that time. We didn't have no go bag, we didn't have our gas tank was empty, all these things. So by the time they finally got me in there, they're just like, it's like a cartoon. It was a puff of smoke and we were in the operating room. The second one, I had more time to think, and I said, oh, you know, this could be the last time like I close my eyes. And I was like, oh God, that's terrible to think about. And I said, well, you know what? I have all these nieces and nephews, and you know what? I'm going to tell myself I'm going to be at each one of their weddings, so I can't not come out of this. And that's just been a driving thing for me. It's just like I'm here for them and to pay them back for all the help and support they've given me. Same thing with the doctors and nurses, and they're investing so much time and effort into you. You got to kind of fight for yourself and advocate for yourself and really put the effort into it also on your end. If they're not hearing you, you know, they probably don't want me to say it, but it's like, Google it. And I was diagnosed in 2000. There wasn't anything online about PSC back then, and I would work with what I could find and try to nudge my doctors into what I wanted testing done and see if they would do it. Sometimes they wouldn't. Now, I mean, they almost want too much testing done. And another thing they talk about, I wanted to say, it's just like going through life, like going through college immunosuppressed, it's difficult. When you get into a classroom, an amphitheater classroom, and you start hearing people cough on one end, you start thinking, oh, I'm going to miss about a week of school. And so I got to catch up and figure out how to do it. And we both went to East Bay, but we were from high school, I mentioned. And she was just so supportive every time I was struggling in a college course, or even later on when I was in the workforce. And just always like, you can do it, you can do it. So I without that support, I don't know if I could have done it. I mean, now you talk to me and I'm just saying, yeah, I'm great. I'm doing great until I'm not. And then that's when she has to kind of kick in and do her thing and force me to go into the hospital or something, because usually I'm like, it's fine. Whatever's, I just need a little nap. I'll feel better after that. And that's never been helpful. Yeah, Brian, is there anything else? Or?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I feel a lot of commonalities there, and I'm much earlier disease. We talk about self-advocacy, and I think you brought up, first of all, the important role that the whole community and the whole care group has to say. You know, my mom's a social worker too, so if a piece of advice, find one in your family. But one thing that stood out to me that I wanted to follow up with you on is you've talked about having to navigate the healthcare system a lot, and you know, for even the simplest patient, there's lots of doctors involved with the care team. So what advice would you have for other patients of like thinking about that first appointment? What tips would you have to help ensure that that's a successful appointment, that you're getting seen and heard And what does success mean to you in that context?
It's a little different now. When I was first starting out, I kept spreadsheets of all my blood tests, any test, any significant life moment that happened. So if I walked into a doctor's office, I can say, no, look at this page here, there's this that happened. And now it's all electronic health records, so it's a lot easier. But I think just coming prepared, writing questions ahead of time, and we have like a open Word document where we can add questions to it real time, and then, so she can't be at the doctor's appointment, I have a list of what she wants to know and what I want to know. And if it doesn't come up, I can, at the end, oh, by the way, she wants to know, or we want to know why this happened, or what can we do about this happening? Because no one's going to be as invested in your healthcare as you. So you really have to make the effort to meet them halfway, because if they don't know about something, they can't help you with it. And again, that's where Jen comes in so much, because I'm like, yeah, I think this happened. And then I'll go on this whole story, and she goes, no, that did not happen. It went like this. And I'm like, oh, that sounds right.
A lot of the times it's because he's really sick and has cholangitis, so he thinks it happens, and we've learned to kind of, I give David space to say, okay, this is what his reality is, and then I come in and go, actually, this is what happened, so the providers will know, like, this is what happened, you know. But I think coming from the other end is looking at our insurance, and I don't think we talk about that enough, because insurance is so hard to navigate, and we've been fortunate enough that I'm a social worker. It's some of the things that I do at work too, and figuring out at what point, you know, and Marjorie was really key in this, does David go on to disability? What does disability look like? And then, like, what are those steps? And then also, you know, like, David wanted to go back to work. Is that feasible if he's on disability, and what does that look like? And then looking at what are my coverages, that, because I'm the primary insurance holder, and looking at our coverage to say, you know, when we finally realize CPMC rocks, we need to stay here. How can I stay on CPMC with these choices when I was going from different jobs, right? And just, unfortunately, our healthcare system it's expensive, even employer-based healthcare insurance, and so it's trying to figure out, like, how do we afford this? How can we do this? And being able to keep David in a place where we feel safe, cared about, and honestly loved by our providers, or his providers. I say ours, but his providers.
Yeah, thank you both. Perfect dovetail into our next part. So we've spoken a little about Marjorie. Marjorie is a licensed clinical social worker who works with Psychiatrist and the rest of the autoimmune team. She's been in the game for about 30 years now, so has dealt with many stories. So let me hand the mic over to Marjorie.
Thank you. Before I introduce our panel, I just want to say what a privilege it has been to work with both Jen and David. They're both an amazing couple, and I really respect them so much. So today we have two really amazing people on our panel. I would first like to introduce Dr. Paul Linde, who is a liver transplant and addiction psychiatrist at CPMC. Excuse me. He is also an clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCSF School of Medicine, where he has worked for over 30 years, specializing in emergency, addiction, and primary care psychiatry. He has a special interest and experience in working with chronically medically ill and those with autoimmune disorders. For today, he is in a good position to speak about the diagnosis and treatment of anxiety, depression, associated fatigue, as well as adding psychological insights into the experience of both patients and caregivers on the journey of illness and recovery. Next, we have Dr. Jessie Soodalter, who is a trained palliative and supportive care, trained in palliative and supportive care, as well as hematology and oncology. She provides symptom management, Coping and Decision-Making Support to Patients and Families in Sutter's CPM Advanced Organ Therapies Program. So we're delighted to have both of them here today, and we'll start out by asking them for their reflections on Gin and David's story.
Thank you, Marjorie, for that introduction, and it's a really privilege to be here. At first, when Kittist asked me, I'm like, who, me? And it's like, well, why not me? So anyway, so I'm really impressed with your resilience. I'm really impressed with your creativity. Because you were faced with such a challenging situation, you found a way out of that situation in a very adaptive way, and really kind of, you know, it's humbling to hear your story, and I think to realize we're all patients at some point. Some of us have more severe illnesses than others, and I think I can say for sure for healthcare providers who've had illnesses and issues and challenges in themselves and in their family, it definitely makes you more compassionate providers. So I have a lot of, you know, compassion for your journey. And I just think that you've learned some of the things the hard way, but, you know, just all of the strategies you've taken on, you know, you figured out the hard way, but I'm really impressed with the courage and resilience that you've shown. And I think part of it is just the uncertainty and unpredictability on this journey, particularly with this particular disease. You don't know what's next. People are telling you, I don't know what causes this. You see physicians and other healthcare providers who go, I don't know what to do. I mean, so I'm just impressed with that. And the other sort of observation is sort of how how we all depend on each other in general. And I'm thinking about that for certainly on the provider side, it's a team sport. I work with Marjorie and the other social workers in the department closely. Jesse and I are very complementary in terms of our knowledge and skill set, and we talk about patients all the time. And same my relationship and Jesse's relationship with the liver specialist, Dr. Yimam, and the other specialists, that it really, to do it properly, is a team sport and requires communication. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think humility is the key word as well. I mean, you obviously need to know your business and what you're doing, but to come to it with that attitude. So, just, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, using education, and then you build your own team as well, right? It's a team sport when you're a patient, right? You obviously have to rely on your partner, which you guys have a great, strong partnership, long-standing. I mean, the things that you've been through together have made you stronger. But it sounds like your extended family. And then you're making your other teammates. Dr. Yimam's your teammate. Marjorie's your teammate. So you build your team from within your community, but then you also build it out. So I guess the essence is like resilience, courage, and teamwork. So I'm impressed. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Paul, for taking all the things I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, I'm so struck by the courage and maturity and confidence that it's taken, starting at such a young age, to face down all of the authority of the medical establishment and hold your ground for the reality that you know to be real. Yeah, I'm hugely impressed with that. And it makes me think about what I think about and talk about with my patients a lot, which is this idea of post-traumatic growth. This idea that going through the kinds of suffering and the kinds of bruising interactions, often with the medical establishment, that folks living with PSC do, these traumas don't only break us, they also build us. And they teach us, they show us strengths that we didn't know we had. They build those strengths like lifting weights at the gym. And as Paul said, they give us depths of compassion and empathy for the suffering of other people that we couldn't have had before. And David, when you and I met in clinic, I hope that this won't be breaking HIPAA, but I was really struck by the ways you told me you fill your day, the ways that you are the person that people can call on when they need a ride to the doctor, and how much joy you get out of going to your nieces and nephews' games and recitals. And that profound interconnectedness and that drive to show up for other people. I am sure without living with PSC, you would have been a wonderful person. And I don't doubt that living with PSC in many ways has made you even more of one. And Gin, I was struck by when you said that I think of the team as our team. We are both of your team. You know, I trained in palliative care, and we are always told the unit of palliative care is the patient and the family. And in many ways, there's no David without you. And there's no you without him, right? Especially as you grew together, you became grown-ups together under this incredible, in this crucible of pressure and stress and intensity. And you are a beautiful, functioning binary. And we are both of your team.
Thank you, Jessie. I'd like to ask you both, how do you help patients navigate uncertainty in decision-making?
I mean, the way that I think about it is sort of to kind of double down on the things that we know that work. And I think just informing yourself in the educational process, I think encouraging you to be persistent. And one thing I've noticed, and I've only been working with liver transplant at CPMC for the last 6 months, is I've noticed that from the patient side of the equation, I think sometimes you feel like you don't get enough in terms of information, support. Some of it is, you know, the physicians and the coordinators, people are super busy. But I think it's reasonable to keep asking for support and asking for what you need. And, you know, obviously the most effective way is to be diplomatic and respectful, but persistent. And you guys, I'm sure, have learned all those skills. Because I do think we could do better. I know people are busy, but I think we can always do better in supporting and educating the patients. Because the way that I think about it is that uncertainty is brutal for all of us. Our brains do not tolerate uncertainty and unpredictability. And the stakes are so high. I mean, literally life and death stakes. Your quality of life is impacted. So I encourage people to educate themselves, to be persistent, polite, but make sure you get your needs taken care of. I mean, everybody knows someone who's demanding and difficult and all of that, and that's part of what we have to deal with. And you understand that you're in a position of trauma and stress and suffering. You may not be at your best. But I think, you know, if you're able to sort of put it together and sort of take that energy and channel it productively. And then I think also just, I love the fact you come in with a list. I prefer my patients to come in with specific questions. I welcome it, and I think part of it is you're also talking about making sure people listen to you. And I think it's such a basic skill. Yes, we're busy, et cetera. Psychiatry, we're lucky we have a lower volume. One of the reasons I went into psychiatry is I know I'd have more time to talk to people, and in fact, I need the time. But I think coming in with questions, organized, then you can have a conversation, because at the end of the day, it's a collaboration, you know. And I think that, you know, try to see your team as your team and working together, so.
There's so much more uncertainty in medicine than we providers ever like to admit. I think we like to project that we know. We know how this is going to go. We know what your case is about. And I think often we don't quite show up fully to the part of our job that is acknowledging the uncertainty, acknowledging that for every single thing that we do in medicine, there's a price to pay, right? There's no free lunch. The prednisone wreaks havoc on your life, right? We try not to offer you things that we don't think are going to benefit you more than they're going to hurt you. But also, at the end of the day, what is a worthwhile cost-benefit trade-off for you is a question only you can answer. So often what I try to do with my patients who are facing difficult, ambiguous, not slam dunk decisions is try as much as possible to clarify what the real cost-benefit trade-off or the risk-benefit trade-off is likely to be, so that they can make that calculation for themselves. That is not our, ultimately, that's not our decision to make, right? David, as you were saying, you know, we are deeply invested in your well-being, but the skin that we have in the game of your life compared to the skin that you have in the game of your life doesn't compare, right? So part of my job, or part of how I see my job, is trying to make sure that my patients have all of the information that they need to visualize the potential different futures that they are deciding between, communicated in language that makes sense to them, that they have every opportunity to ask every single question and get every single clarification, and that once they feel satisfied that they understand the risk benefit or the cost benefit, supporting whatever decision ultimately they make, even when it's often not necessarily the one that I would make. And I think often when we sort of find ourselves in the land of no good options, right? Nobody grows up thinking, gosh, I really want a liver transplant when I grow up, right? When we're in the land of no good options, how do we find the least bad option? How do we, what can we hope for in the future, and how do we get there? And like I say, ultimately, those are questions that only you can decide.
Well, thank you. I think this would probably be a good time to maybe open it up for questions.
Hi. I didn't write this out perfectly, but the gist of what I'm thinking is that, like, so we live in this world where there's so much expected of us. Like, as patients, we have to keep up with all our appointments, with all our treatments, with all our procedures every year, all our labs, everything. And then many of us have to work full time to have our health care, to do everything. And it seems like we're using all of our resources, like our internal resources, to just stay afloat. And I'm wondering, I don't know that there's an answer to this, but where do we find, like, the joy? Where do we find the agency? Where do we find the relief in that picture? Where, like, this is, you know, the hand we've been dealt. We have to deal with it. We live in the system. We have to do these things. But how do we find space for ourselves within that, or beyond it?
Oh, you start.
I think it's going to be personal to you. Like, things I do to give myself some space might be go out on a walk. I go out to the redwoods, or I get myself lost into a book or a TV series, and somehow just being able to either zone out or just take my mind off it and look at, oh, trees, sun, clouds. It always seemed to kind of to lift my mood a little bit. And for us, you may have picked up that family's important. So I might go see a family member, niece and nephew, might go see if they're playing like a baseball game, go out, hang out, and hanging out with little kids is great. Everything can be super exciting and super cool, and sometimes you don't even have to do much, and they're so happy. And then that just rubs off on you. I hope that helps you a little bit. Anyone? Yeah.
I think wearing my patient hat for a second, we've talked about the uncertainty that comes with the disease. You don't know what each day is going to look like. You don't know what the next hour is going to look like sometimes, you know? There's a silver lining to that I found, is that it makes each moment more beautiful, and that if I don't know how much time I have or how long I'm going to be able to do this activity, like as an extremely active upright basis, that's kind of hard to do when you have significant fatigue. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of what I can, you know? And that may mean appearing in different ways than I was used to before. It may mean letting go of things outside of my control. You know, we talk a lot, I find stoicism helpful, of like embracing what you can control and letting go of what you don't. But it's sort of taking it as it goes. It's just living in the moment, as hard as that is when the moment isn't pleasant. There are pleasant things to be found in that, and those are the things that have kept me going in those really hard moments.
I guess I could talk from the caregiver's perspective, because we too go through it with our partner. And it's hard when you can't literally take away the pain, right? And so what I found, I started doing these yearly albums, like what Brian was saying, and it started off with, what if I lose David and I forget these memories? And then it turned into, I'm making these albums, and I'm like, oh, remember this, David? Remember? And then it just reminds us that in all of this, there's still a lot of fun, there's still a lot of joy, there's still a lot of connections, you know, that we have, you know, regardless of what's going on. It's just that reminder. So finding those kind of hobbies, remembering those memories, and you know, often David and I were so often we'll look at these albums, and it just makes us happy to know that, yeah, there are moments that are there that are always going to be there, and we've captured them in these albums.
Do we have any questions from online?
We do, yes. So mental health stigma is real, sharing trauma, depression with your family, let alone at a clinic. So do you see a place where psychiatry will be more integrated with the transplant process?
I sure hope so. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that it's been integrated historically. I think what's happened is psychiatrists have been in a position of, in the evaluation process, you know, for clearance for transplant. I mean, on the transplant side of things. And I think there's really is a dearth of mental health care, that the demand is going to be greater than the supply, that, you know, by the nature of the work we do, which takes a lot of time, it's hard for us to see a high volume of patients. Having said that, though, I do think there's a role to sort of work with the hepatologists and primary care and other specialists in general, in identifying anxiety and depression and treating them. I think it's really very clear that comorbid depression and anxiety and untreated trauma, sequelae, make for worse outcomes. The tricky part, as it's, you know, from the talk this morning and the talk still to come, is sort of the number of physical symptoms with chronic liver disease that overlap with symptoms of depression. So depression, it's a clinical syndrome. It includes both physical and more psychological and emotional. And so things like insomnia, fatigue, changes in appetite are sort of found in chronic liver disease as well as depression. The key thing in depression is to identify the more psychological and emotional symptoms of depression. And depression, as you probably know, it's kind of is its own animal, and it's abnormal. It does need to be treated. It's not just being sad. I mean, we all have losses and have to grieve things, and it's appropriate to be sad at times, particularly with the state of the world as it is. But it's when it takes on, it becomes persistent and lasts for a long, you know, on the order of weeks. And then with these other associated physical and psychological symptoms, then it does need to be treated. It will improve the outcome. Anxiety is a totally different animal because anxiety is part of a normal human experience. And if you think about anxiety, it motivates us. It helps to identify what we need to do. And then anxiety, of course, from an evolutionary perspective, the panic attack basically is fight or flight. So we have this fight or flight response inside of us that we sometimes pull out in situations that are inappropriate. So anxiety is normal, but on the other hand, when anxiety gets to the point where you're having recurrent panic attacks or crippling obsessive thinking, things of that nature, then we do need to look at treatment. But I think, yeah, I totally agree the need is there, and I think it's utilizing not just psychiatrists, but also social work, psychologists, other mental health professionals. But it's an area where we could do better.
Is it okay if I sort of add something? I just wanted to expand on something you said, Paul, which is that grief is a normal part of the human experience. And in working with folks who live with chronic serious illnesses and with folks who have gone through transplants, it's been my experience that almost everybody has to go through a phase of grief. That, when you found out as young as you did that you had a chronic serious and rare illness, the future that you thought you were going to have went away and was replaced by a different future. And I think most people go through some version of that at some stage in living with a chronic serious illness. And it is easy to mistake grief for depression. It is easy to wake up with that 10-ton weight on your chest every day and feel like something is wrong with you. It's easy for us as clinicians to mistake that for depression. And I think it's really important to differentiate those things because grief is normal. It's a process. And there's joy on the other side of it if you do that hard labor down in the soul mines. We don't have medicines that fix grief, right? It would be great if we had medicines that fix the human condition, but our powers are limited.
Well, believe me, I'm also an addiction psychiatrist. People try all the time.
Right, exactly. And that's the problem, right? We don't grow up learning to expect to suffer. This is not a culture that teaches us to expect to suffer. There are many forms of human suffering that we don't have good medicines for. And if we don't expect that some days are going to hurt, and that is normal, and that we have the reserves and the resilience and the coping abilities to withstand that suffering and survive it, then of course we look for whatever we can find to numb that pain. Because if we don't think we should be feeling the pain, we feel like we're effing it up in life.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Go grief.
A funny place to end, but I guess we have 1 minute.
So for 1 minute, based on what the two of you just said, and I have very strong opinions about this, how can anyone in whatever stage of PSC you are ask for help from either a psychiatrist or palliative care? How can a patient do that?
I think it's incumbent on the provider, meaning the psychiatrist. I'll speak about psychiatrists. Incumbent for us to listen very carefully to anticipate the need, I think.
Are you asking how to get in front of us in the first place?
Oh, how to get a referral?
Yeah.
Oh.
Ask your hepatologist to refer you to us.
Yeah, I mean,
We'd be delighted to see you.
yeah. Is it really that?
I was going to say, we definitely are very likely to have those in the Department of Transplant and Hepatology, so it's very easy for us to, what I was going to say is at CPMC, it's unique. I'm sure there are other programs that may also have psychiatry and palliative care within the department, but we really are fortunate to have them. They're part of our selection process, and they do see patients pre and post transplant, inpatient, outpatient for symptoms and pain management. Jesse has been tremendous, and the same thing for Paul. I think we're really lucky to have them. So I think you just have to inquire about getting a referral. You have to advocate for yourself. Is that you need the help. Palliative care, I think people have a misunderstanding maybe of palliative care. Palliative care is not only planning, end of life things or setting goals of care, as they are very helpful in managing symptoms and just setting goals and coping overall. So we're lucky to have them.
I promise I won't drag you off to hospice.
I'll just wrap up with a very simple practical note. As patients, it's often hard to make that first call to set up the appointment. There's a lot of stigma around mental health especially. What has been helpful in the past is accountability, and what that has looked like for me is my friend sits across the room from me and just stares at me until I make the call. So sometimes it takes unique forms. And hopefully on a more positive note, we can transition to our next speaker. So.
Okay, well, thank you all. That was a very good session. Okay. Our